Welcome to AHRC TV's weekly roundup. Indonesia is the subject of this week's special program. AHRC TV brings you the following reports. 11 years after Munir's assassination, his wife Suciwati unveils Munir Street in The Hague and calls on the Indonesian president to resolve the case. Filipino migrant worker Mary-Jane Veloso faces the firing squad in Indonesia for drug offense. We speak with Eni Lestari of Asian Migrants Coordinating Body and Dolores Valladares of United Filipinos, who are lobbying hard to save her life. Human rights defender Chris Biantoro talks about fatal flaws in Indonesia's criminal justice institution. Welcome to AHRC TV's weekly roundup. I am Celine Brocheda. This week's program begins with a report about Suciwati Munir, who was in the Netherlands this week to unveil a street that has been named in the memory of her husband Munir. Indonesia's most outspoken human rights defender, a thorn in the side of Indonesia's powerful military apparatus, and the Right Livelihood Award laureate, Munir was assassinated on a flight from Jakarta to Amsterdam on 7 September 2004. Suciwati unveiled Munir Street in The Hague on Tuesday, April 14, flanked by Edward Nazarski, director of Amnesty International, and the mayor of The Hague, Josias von Artsen. Suciwati has released a petition signed and supported by 36 Right Livelihood Award laureates from across the world, calling on Indonesian President Joko Widodo to honor his election promises and bring those that masterminded Munir assassination to account. President Widodo made it an election campaign promise to resolve Indonesia's past human rights violation. However, those involved in the conspiracy to kill Munir still roam free under President Widodo's watch. Since Munir was poisoned with arsenic, the alleged hired assassin Polikarpus has been convicted, then acquitted, then convicted again of the killing, and subsequently sentenced to 14 years in prison. Despite the conviction, Polikarpus has already been freed, and alleged mastermind General Andro Priono appears to be in close association with President Widodo. Here is Suciwati expressing her frustration about the lack of progress in this case.
Betul, presidennya hari ini ganti, tapi banyak hal yang saya pikir yang justru melihat kasus ini menjadi mandek. Pertama, begitu jadi presiden, wakil presidennya membuat statement bahwa kasus Munir sudah selesai. Yang kedua, sejak awal presiden ini sudah didukung oleh para pelaku pelanggar HAM, dan orang yang langsung bertanggung jawab terhadap pembunuhan Munir itu justru menjadi orang penasihat presiden. Dan orang akan melihat bahwa kita nggak perlu lagi melakukan sesuatu yang dunia aktivisme kayak Munir, karena toh kalau kemudian ini berbahaya tidak ada perlindungan di situ, tidak ada penyelesaian kasus. Jadi penting untuk kita terus berteriak mengatakan bahwa harus diselesaikan kasusnya. Kalau tidak, ini menjadi presiden buruk, dan kami terus mengingatkan itu kepada masyarakat bahwa ini tidak boleh lagi terjadi. Menurut saya penting karena kalau tidak terus-menerus diingatkan, maka dan ini orang-orang yang sangat penting yang mengingatkan di seluruh dunia bagaimana mereka mendorong soal hak asasi.
Next, a global campaign is underway to save the life of Mary-Jane Veloso, a 30-year-old Filipino migrant domestic worker who was caught arriving in Indonesia's Jakarta airport in April 2010 with 2.6 kilos of heroin in her luggage. Draconian drug laws mean Veloso was sentenced to death. After 5 years on a death row, it appears that the execution is now imminent. According to one campaign underway in Hong Kong to save Veloso from the firing squad, this mother of two is not a drug trafficker, but a poor Filipino migrant worker who was duped by a drug trafficker to carry a bag containing the drugs. In other words, Veloso had no knowledge that the bag she was carrying contained any drugs. Veloso went to Dubai in 2009 to work as a domestic worker, hoping to improve her family's situation and to provide education for her children. However, she returned to Manila before a 2-year contract ended because her employer in Dubai had tried to rape her. In 2010, a friend approached Veloso with the information that her friend in Malaysia was looking for domestic help. After arriving in Malaysia with her friends who recruited her, Veloso was informed that her prospective job was no longer available, but that another job was available in Indonesia. The friend gave Veloso an empty suitcase to put her clothes in, and gave her money for the trip to Indonesia. As she passed through the X-ray machine at the airport in Yogyakarta, 2.6 kilos of heroin valued at $500,000 was discovered packed in the inner part of the suitcase. A coalition of migrant workers organizations in Hong Kong have written a letter of appeal to President Joko Widodo of Indonesia, pleading for the life of Mary Jane Veloso to be spared by granting her clemency for humanitarian reasons. The letter was delivered to the Indonesian Consulate General in Hong Kong earlier this week. The coalition argues that Veloso, initially a victim of her socio-economic situation of extreme poverty, was subsequently further victimized by both labor traffickers and the drug syndicates. As a victim, the coalition argues she deserves all the support that she can get, support that her own government has failed to provide to her. An excerpt of the letter of appeal reads as follows. We take this occasion to appeal to your sense of human compassion for one so downtrodden and socially underprivileged as Veloso, who is being punished for being an unknowing accessory in a drug-related crime. While we recognize your government priority in combating drug traffickers, we have also heard about your government's platform that is based on social justice for those who have less in life. And it gives us great optimism that your magnanimity towards the poor will yet be ascendant in responding to our appeal. For more on this story, AHRC TV spoke with Eni Lestari, spokesperson of Asian Migrants Coordinating Body, and Dolores Valladares, chairperson of United Filipinos in Hong Kong, who are both at the forefront of the campaign to save Veloso's life.
Actually, this is one of the major concerns that we are facing as migrant workers, not only in Hong Kong, also in other countries, because we think that these things are happening because the problem of poverty, unemployment, low wages in our country was not addressed by our government at the moment, and even the previous government. So this problem of poverty forced the Filipinos to go overseas to look for a job. And then the illegal recruitment, illegal trafficking, about drugs is happening. And these syndicates are actually targeting the poor people in the Philippines, like Mary Jane.
But we do not know much detail about her until 2 weeks ago. Our partner in the Philippines, Migrante International, actually came to us and say, we are in touch with the family of Mary Jane, and they asked us for help with regard to her daughter execution. And then from there we study her case, we go detail into her life story, we try to gather the facts about her, also the court proceeding in Indonesia, and we found a lot of unfortunate circumstances that made her trapped into that condition. And we realized that she is just one of the many domestic workers who tried to find a job, and she was cheated by syndicate, human trafficker, to carry a drug without her knowing that it's a drug.
And actually, Mary Jane is just a simple mother of two. She tried to work harder purse in the Middle East to support her family, but unfortunately, she was almost raped by her employer, and she was forced to leave Dubai. And after that, her friend, whom she known for a long time, told her that there was a work in Malaysia, and she believed her, and she go with her in Malaysia. and then unfortunately there was no job in Malaysia, and then she was promised again that there's job in Indonesia. So knowing this person and believing that she could have work in Indonesia to support her family, then she go there without knowing that she was framed up by putting drugs in her luggage. So basically what she's looking for is to have a job, to have a living, and then she can send back money to her family. So in that sense, like any normal migrant workers, no, looking for a job.
It was unfair trial. Why? Because first Mary Jane was brought to court without proper interpreter. The only interpreter available given to her was from a student who is still studying language. And Mary Jane was not someone who is well speaking in English either. She doesn't understand Indonesian language. She doesn't understand the court proceeding in Indonesia. I don't think so she understands the court proceeding in the Philippines even. So for her to go to that far to understand what is going on into her case is really a big issue. And second issue also the fact that she did not have a lawyer in the beginning. She was not having any legal representation. I think it was only by middle of the case when the Philippine government, appoint a lawyer for her, but it was already in the middle of things.
We were thankful for the Indonesian consulate. The acting consul general is very much concerned about the issue of Mary Jane, because they said it's also their concern with their nationals, and then they are saying that they will give the appeal letter to the president of Indonesia.
The consular was telling us, they actually explained to us how the syndicate works. In the past, it used to be an African people, like men usually, are being used to be the courier of all these drug dealers. And when a lot of government alarm with the presence of African men carrying drugs, then they become very conscious of African, they become stricter to African people, right? Now, the drug syndicate knew they must use different route. In the past, according to the consulate, they used to use Bangkok, Thailand, as a port of centralizing and sending people off to different countries like Myanmar, Indonesia, China. But when several governments already decided to execute people who carry the drug, now they change the pattern. The syndicate also know they need to change the pattern. They use Asian people. A lot of them are women, many of them are migrants. In fact, from the cases in China, Macau, and Hong Kong, 5 of them are domestic workers.
As a migrant worker, we are appealing to all the Filipinos overseas and also other nationals to support us with our campaign to save the life of Mary Jane Veloso.
Finally, AHRC TV turns to human rights defender Chris Biantoro for his views on some of the most serious issues facing Indonesia's criminal justice institutions. Here is Chris.
The Indonesian rule of law since Suharto stepped down generally is much better. Yeah? We ratify several important international human rights instruments, for instance, like Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Covenant on Economic, Social, and Culture, and also Convention Anti-Torture. So in general, our legal system is much better, but in practice, we still have a lot of problems. And this year, we also documented torture, which occurred in the police custody, in the military offices, and also in the prisons. Well, compared to the last year, the number of torture in this year, I mean from June 2014 until March 2015, the number is increased. We documented 108 cases of torture. Compared to the last year, it's only 95 cases of torture. So what happened with the legal enforcement in Indonesia, why torture significantly increased. We already ratify convention anti-torture. We have National Police Commission, etc. We have National Commission on Human Rights, but they cannot do anything. Whenever we file a complaint to the National Commission on Human Rights, they didn't recognize that individual torture as a crime. It's very, very weird. When the perpetrators come from the military, for instance, the case which occurred in Puncak Jaya, Papua, we submit complaint to the National Commission on Human Rights. They recommend us to go to the military office, to submit complaint to the military police. Then how come the perpetrators from the military, but we have to file a complaint to the military? Then the case is there. The prosecution never happened, and it's only being processed through internal mechanism. We call it violation of code of conduct of the military. And then we never heard that the perpetrators have been convicted by the military judges. The current government declared that law and human rights is one of the priority. Mr. Jokowi says in his vision and mission that law and human rights is the priority to be increased, to be protected. And the government said that we will present in whatever situation to protect Indonesian citizens. But more than 100 days of Pak Jokowi presidency, we didn't see any progress. The human rights violations still occurred in many places. The number of torture increased. Impunity is still there. This is general situation in Indonesia until present.
That is all for this weekly roundup. For more on these and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.